That's why. Okay. So I gotta pull up my notes somewhere else. I had them on my iPad. Where are we? There we go. Here we are. Sorry. Alrighty. So why was net neutrality repealed? From my understanding, the FCC repealed net neutrality, or open internet, hoping to restore order to the internet and bring about more safety. Um, at the time, the FCC chairman at the time long opposed the regulation, saying that the regulations had impeded on innovation, which to some understanding that they, from a perspective that could be considered true. Under these regulations, ISPs could not discriminate against any lawful content by blocking websites or applications. ISPs could not slow the transmission of data because of the nature of the content, as long as it was legal. And ISPs could not create options for premium, faster internet for those who paid for prioritization. Um, Now, with net neutrality being gone, um, uh, previously with net neutrality, there was no new infrastructure, and so if ISPs can't charge more for their services, then they can invest in their infrastructure, which is something that needs to be severely looked at, because we're a lot of the ISPs are still working on coaxial lines, which are heavily outdated and can't provide for higher bit services and larger bandwidths and more data to be used. So with net neutrality, large amounts of data were being consumed without paying for it, and this money could go towards expanding the high speed network to rural areas, which is something that could definitely be a possibility and help a lot of people. Um, Second question: what did experts predict would be the consequences of repealing this legislation? From my understanding, some experts predicted benefits, lower price plans for basic service, and more innovation around internet service providers. Um, but most experts agreed that the average customer should expect to pay more, which makes sense if um, many believing that the competition will be driving force behind innovations and upgrades to, as I stated before, dated ISP infrastructures, resulting in increased pricing on all levels and an increase in tiers and options, giving consumers more options, which in both ways, creating competition and giving consumers more options is always a good way to go, especially in this capitalistic society that we live in. We want to be able to give people as many options as they want, so they can be as customizable and choose exactly how what their plans would want to be in their terms of service. Um, and so just giving people more options and possibly allowing for some much needed upgrades to infrastructure and probably to some more systems, was a much needed relief that I could see that ISPs um, would not want net neutrality to stay as a part of regulations. Another thing that ISPs have to deal with is under the net neutrality. Well, actually, the FCCs have to deal with is that under net neutrality, the FCC must monitor the ISP's compliance with the regulation rules, which includes reports 2 times a year, which can become costly for ISPs of any size. And so at this level, it might actually price out some smaller level ISPs that are trying to build and start up. All right. And third question: what have the actual consequences been for those of us living in the U.S.? Um, did I just get that? No, here we are. For those living in the U.S., I've only seen so far from my research that ISPs have slowly started to make a move. Nothing too drastic. Although we had already seen some effects by ISPs offering unlimited plans, but placing limits on video playback quality and speed. On yeah, on video playback quality and speed. Those with limited resources, such as small businesses, could find paying for quality to increase drastically. Um, and paid quote unquote fast lanes means companies or individuals will have to choose between degraded services or paying fees, which, in my opinion, is probably going to be really problematic for a lot of small business, considering nearly 80% of U.S. commerce is done by small business, um, and a large portion of our GDP comes from small businesses as well. So this actually might have a large impact on small businesses and individuals who rely on steady internet speeds and access to the internet at a reliable rate to see issues in their growth. Okay. Alrighty. And has this change affected you personally in any way? Personally, I've seen some effects of this already. What with upper limits being placed, I often find upper limits on videos that I want to watch by my ISP and video playback sites, most notably YouTube. It's one of the reasons. It's one of the other reasons that my family is now on an unlimited data plan. We there's four of us, and we'd blow through our data pretty early. Outside of being away from the home and not having Wi-Fi, then we'd come home and the Wi-Fi would get throttled while at home during peak hours, which it kind of makes sense. Um, the same way that energy is priced differently at peak hours. All in all, it just means that I've got more particular with when and what I watch in and outside of the house, um, and I can assume that that's probably happened to a bunch of other people as well. Um, Most notably, it hasn't affected me too much, but mostly because I live at home with my parents and my sister. And so, from a consumer standpoint, I'm not directly affected by those rates, but I assume in the next couple of years I'll be finding myself face to face with those pricing differences and seeing how those stack up against how they used to be. And do you believe that net neutrality rules will be restored in the future? Why or why not? I honestly don't think that net neutrality rules will be reestablished in totality. I believe a few of the regulations, especially the ones, especially the discriminatory regulations towards content, could remain, but all in all, it actually might be good for the internet. It could very much increase competition among ISPs to upgrade, and competition is always a very good necessity in a capitalistic society because it generates innovation and calls for improvement among different competitors. Um, Especially with the severely dated infrastructure and will prove to probably provide more reliable service and speeds. Although it could further divide content availability from some consumers, um, I think that net neutrality shouldn't have been repealed, and some sort of compromise need to be achieved to keep the internet access unsubjugated. Allowing anyone to access any form of the any content from the internet from anywhere, giving people that sort of freedom is a necessity in today's society, especially how much internet plays, how much the internet plays into our daily lives. Um, I this the whole debate with net neutrality is probably just going to continue for many more years until some sort of compromise is is found, which may be a while. Um, yes, but hopefully that answered all the questions.